Praise be to your holy name, Father. I plead the blood over this video and let it be a teaching tool for people to grow in you. For Yahshua, I know you're coming soon. Our hearts and our minds and our thoughts need to be prepared for your coming. And I praise you and thank you for this awesome weekend that you have given us. And I praise you and thank you for all the things that you have done for us. I praise you, Father, in the name of Yahshua HaMashiach, and I come to you asking a blessing to be upon this video, that it will bless many. In the name of Yahshua HaMashiach, Amen. Today I felt led to really come to you and talk to you about Joseph. And I know that you've heard the story about Joseph and his life and what happened. And in fact, you could go back and start in Genesis 37 all the way to the end, all the way to Genesis, last chapter. 50th chapter. I thought there's a lot of chapters about one man and his fate. Now Joseph and Benjamin was full brothers. The only children physically that Ruth had, the one that Jacob, the one that become Israel, loved. And Joseph was Jacob's favorite son. And God had put a special blessing on Joseph from the time he was born. And Joseph had many, many dreams, which caused a lot of problems. I mean, a lot of problems around the house. Even his dad had to get on him one time when he had a dream that all of his brothers and even his dad would kneel before him. Because, you know, what are you saying? I'm your dad. I'm not going to kneel before you. You know, I mean, you know. And his brothers hated him. So when Jacob had a coat of many colors made for Joseph, that was just almost like the icing on top of the cake for the brothers. So when Joseph went out to check on his brothers, because he was kind of like a tattletale. If his brothers was doing something that they weren't supposed to do, he'd go back and go, Dad, they're doing this and they're doing that, you know. So in a way, the things that would come to pass was to make Joseph grow in humility. Because if you look at Joseph's life beginning, he knew his dad loved him more than the rest. He knew he was having awesome dreams and great prophecies given to him. And as a young person, sometimes you don't know how to handle it. It's like, oh, pat me on the back, you know, I am special. But God had better and bigger things planned for Joseph, like he does for all of our lives. But sometimes in that calling that he has called us, we have to be broken and brought down to the state of humility, that what is going on is not us, but him. So when he went out there and his brothers seen him, and they had thought about killing him, but it ended up, instead of killing him because of his brother Judah, they throwed him into a pit. And when Judah was gone and the other brothers was there alone with him in the pit, and the caravan from Egypt come by, they sold him to them. Then he went, and then they went and killed an animal and soaked the coat in blood. We pretty well all know that. And we know that when he was sold, he went into a house as a servant, and the wife of the main person of the house that owned Joseph tried to seduce him, just as the world tries to seduce us in coming back into the things of this world, the lust of the flesh, the desires of this world. In fact, sex is one of the major controlling factors of this world today that causes downfall of everyone. Ministers' wives, presidents. And she was trying to seduce him into a sexual affair as the world tries to seduce us. But Joseph rejected her because he honored his master. And when she lied on him, as the world lies on us, you will find that out throughout your life, that many times things will come up and people will lie on you, tell stories about you, and hurt you in every way they can. And Joseph was thrown in prison because of her lie. As there are many that are in prison today because of lies that people have told on them. But in the long run, on this case, God was putting Joseph in a position that he would be in, that not only would he be broken and humbled more, because remember, he was a mighty person in his father's house, but now he is nothing but a slave and a servant, and now a prisoner in prison, all for things that he really didn't do. He simply told his brothers the truth. His dad loved him more than the rest, and jealousy come in and destroyed him there, which that happens all the time. You can see the jealousy many times destroying people's lives. Not only the person they touch, but the ones outside. Jealousy is a tool of Satan. So it put Joseph in the state that he would have to be in Egypt at a time that he needed to be in Egypt, because that's where God, Yahweh, wanted him to be. And Joseph, through the humility and knowing who God was, because he was raised in a godly family by Jacob, that he repented and he became humble and he began to pray and he began to seek the face of the Lord. He began to seek the truth. So when it came about, when these two other people came in, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker that happened to be in prison at the same time, and they had dreams, and Joseph interpreted them. One would live and one would die. And we've seen that the chief cupbearer was the one that was preserved. Why? Because he was the one that come before Pharaoh. He was the one that served personally Pharaoh. So he was privy when he got out, and he was privy to everything that Pharaoh said. So when Pharaoh started having dreams and things about, the fatted cattle and the lean cattle eating the fatted cattle and stuff, and he was wanting to know, and the cupbearers could see people trying to interpret and couldn't. So God preserved the right person to be in the right place at the right time, even though for a while he had forgot about Joseph. But at the proper moment, God sparked that memory back into his mind, and he told Pharaoh, I know a man that can interpret your dreams, because he interpreted mine, and they were right. The chief baker, life was taken, my life was spared. It was all in a dream. He interpreted it, and it come true. So Pharaoh brought Joseph up, and gave him this dream. And the second dream was 7 years of grain that was healthy and that was strong. And then the thin ears of grain swallowed up the 7 ears of grain. So the two dreams were intertwined, and so when Joseph came up and Pharaoh, said, all right, I'm going to paraphrase. All right, my cupbearer says that you interpret dreams. Nobody has been able to interpret my dreams, so I'm laying it out to you. And he tells Joseph his dreams, and God, Yahweh, revealed the source of the dream and what was going to happen. And because of Joseph being in the right place at the right time, was able to interpret this dream. And through the interpretation of this dream, and Pharaoh believing him, he come in charge. The second under Pharaoh. Pharaoh was the first, Joseph was the second, and everything that Joseph said, he was speaking for Pharaoh, and they had abundant crops, and they put it in storehouses, and the wisdom that Yahweh gave to Joseph just multiplied the grain crop. So for 7 years there was plenty, and then 7 years of famine come. If it had not been for Yahweh putting Joseph in the right place at the right time, everyone would have suffered from drought. But because of this journey that Joseph had to go through, it wasn't a pleasant journey. It was a humiliating journey, a journey of stripping away and pruning the young boy to become a full-grown man of God. He had to be stripped, he had to be pruned, he had to be brought into humility so that he could rule and reign over a great nation with the Pharaoh. Without that stripping and that pruning, he would not have been able to be that servant that Yahweh had called him to be. He would have still grew up to be that arrogant young man into a very arrogant older man. So Yahweh had to strip him and prune him into the image of Christ, Yahshua, to put him in the place where he could rule in a very, very prosperous kingdom at that time. And through it, and when the famine came, through it, he was able to save his people and his father. And all the prophecies that he was given when he was younger was coming true then, because they had to go to him to survive. Because their food was gone. Their food source was gone. They were starving down there where they were. So they had to go to Egypt to survive. And because the stripping and pruning of one young man into the humble person that he was when he was a grown man, he was able to look at his brothers with compassion and not hate. Because it would have been easy for hate and anger to have built up on him. It would have been easy when he was thrown in that pit for that seed of anger and hate to be planted. It would have been easy for that seed of anger and hate to grow when the Egyptians bought him and he became a slave in a house and had a master. He could have become angry and bitter whenever the woman was trying to seduce him, and he could have laid with her and then lost his life for the sin. But instead, he rejected her humbly and spoke only the truth when asked, and he was put in prison for it. So that hate and anger could have growed in him. But if he would have permitted hate and anger to come in his life and grew, then God could not have used him. Period. It took that stripping away and that humility that when he's seen his brothers, instead of wanting to kill them and make them pay for what they did and cast them down, he played a little game with them, but yet it was all in humility and long-suffering and forgiveness. For he chose to forgive his brothers for what they did to him, the wrong they did to him. And that he would live to see his baby brother, his full brother, the only other one that was born to his mother. And he lived to see his father and embrace him and live with him in Egypt. Forgiving. Do you understand my words? I'm saying forgiving his enemies, just like Yahshua did on the cross. He was in a state of power that he could have went to Pharaoh and said, these are the ones that betrayed me. These are the ones that are my Judas. These are the ones that hated me. These are the ones that wanted me dead. So now I desire for them to die. But he didn't. He could have wanted them to die and go to hell immediately and suffer for all the things. He could have even had them put in prison and brought out pain and suffering before they died. But he didn't. He chose in the pruning, in the humility of Yahshua. Of Yahweh. He stood in the example that Yahshua did when he walked. It was like a pre-shadowing of what would come upon Yahshua. Because Yahshua chose to forgive us and to die for us. And that paid that sacrificial offering. As Joseph paid that sacrificial offering when he was thrown into the pit and brought out and sent to Egypt to become a ruler over a great nation. As Yahshua is now sitting at the right hand of the Father, a ruler over a great nation. Forgiveness is a very important thing. That's why Yahshua said to forgive your enemies, to pray for them that despitefully use you. Just as Joseph chose to forgive his brothers for what they did to him. They were his flesh and blood brothers through his father. But he chose to forgive them. And in this forgiveness, this desire of forgiveness, and going through this pruning that Yahweh had him to go through, he was able to look out there on his brothers with love and bring them into him. Hold them, hug them, forgive them. Even they were still afraid after Jacob died. They thought, oh, maybe Joseph and now will have vengeance on us. Because they were afraid, because they had done a horrible, horrible thing to their brother. But Joseph forgave them. and loved them. And in fact, when he was dying, he gave them an instruction that one day you will leave this country. You will leave this land. And when you do, take my bones with you. Take me with you. Don't leave me here in Egypt, but take my bones with you and bury me over there with my dad. Because see, when Jacob died, Pharaoh and the whole bunch went over there for Jacob's funeral, because Joseph was in high regard of the Pharaoh. So he knew that they were coming out. He knew that one day they would have to take his bones and they would have to bury them over there with his dad in that land. In that land that one day they would have to go through.
I'm back.
Okay, I'm on the computer. But that was my beloved husband. Bless his name. Bless Yahshua's name for blessing him. I'm sorry. I just love him. But he's not my God. He's my husband. But anyway, as I continue, we sometimes wonder why, when our pruning time comes, why do we have to walk through the things that we have to walk through? Because we have to come to him in all humility. We have to be pruned to the point that we can be humble like Joseph did when he took his arms and put them around his brothers and loved them no matter what they did to him. We have to come to that point that we can forgive completely, honestly, of all the harm and the wrong that people have done us. Because you know what? Sometimes, if things hadn't happened the way they did, then we would have been arrogant. We would have been thinking we're number one with God, and that all the prophecies that we may speak and all the dreams that we have dreamed has exalted us beyond measure. But they haven't. They didn't Joseph. They want us. And God cannot use a person that has an attitude, I am the authority. I am the only one. We have to become humble. And we have to say, your will be done, Father. And forgive those that has hurt me, those that have broken me, and those that have misused me, so that one day I can reach out and put my arms out and take them back into my life and love them with the true forgiveness and love of the Father, and maybe even help them in the time of stress, that when they need help. And today, I want to say to you, Elizabeth, that's why I love you. Even though you rejected me, even though you call me a Judas, even though you say the things that you say about other people, I forgive you, and I ask all of them to forgive you. and just dust their feet off and say, I am not going to fight with you any longer. I'm just going to forgive you and pray for you. That's what I'm going to do. Father, purify us. Prune us to become like you, Father, in the name of Yahshua. Prune us to the point that we are humble and obedient to you, that when we speak words that are of you, of kindness and love and forgiveness, that we will stand for you and you alone, not this new world order thing that's trying to get going through many of the ministers and through what is sweeping around the world that's on the news, that I just, the conferences that they wanting to hold to bring all of the religions together as one. Father, forgive them, forgive them, forgive them. Oh, Father, but prune your true people. Prune your children, that we can stand as one against that evil force that is trying to take over this world and will after the bride is gone. Father, in the name of Yahshua, prune us that we will be perfect, just like you are perfect. And I know the pruning hurts, but when you prune us, we have more fruit for you. So let our fruit be of you and not of this world. I plead the blood on this video, and let us grow in your likeness and in your love and in your mercy, and let us reach out to this dying world that people will see your light, your true light, in the name of Yahshua HaMashiach. Amen. And I hope you enjoyed the videos that I'd been putting up with songs, and I'm going to put more up there because I think we need to praise him and rejoice in him, and we need to go and worship him in the fullness of who he is. Blessings be to you in the name of Yahshua HaMashiach, for I truly do love you. I do love you with the love of Yahshua.